There's the annual report, and it has a lot of that stuff in it, but not the financials.
I can ask our directors.
Yeah. All right, can everybody hear me? Yes, good, all right. Welcome to the 2024 Congregational Budget Meeting. This is the pre-meeting to the big show for the Congregational Meeting, which is next week. And so for those of you who don't know me, my name is Eric Soes. I've been a member of Robertson Wesley for almost 30 years. That's a long time. Wonder if I get it in for being 30 years at Robertson Wesley. Well, I'm on two committees. I'm on the M&P committee and the finance committee. So that's what happens when you've been here for 30 years, but that's okay. A wife, 3 kids, and they've all come through this church, been baptized in this church. We live over there, 2 or 3 blocks, so more than happy to give back to this church, which has done tremendous stuff for my family and the beautiful life that we have. So we have, we're going to go over the 2023 actuals and then the 2024 budget, and stop me at any time if you have any questions. We have a mic. Where's the mic, Brad? Oh, there it is, right there. So if you got a question, raise your hand. Richard's going to run over there with the mic, and then ask your question, stop me, and we will address it. All right? Okay, let's get started. Oh, yeah, okay, sure, yeah. Well, we've got some handouts. Here we go. These are the financial statements. So we're going to take a look at the actuals. So a little proviso on the actuals that there are our 12-month year-end financials. They are audited, but these are draft numbers. So we're just in the process of getting the final numbers from the auditors. Will they change? Probably. Will they change by a lot? Probably not. There's always little tweaks that auditors have in the numbers, but for the most part, these numbers are quite accurate. So let's start off with revenues. What do we do? About 600 grand in total, with a big chunk of it coming from you folks and the people in the congregation. What do we budget for? What were we thinking way back? That's what we predicted. Our crystal ball said we were going to do about 600 grand. We got there, but it was a little bit of a gyration on how we got there. Our donations were off by about 50,000. And that's because we had about 3 or 4 key members of the congregation that have left us. So there was a little shortfall there. Rentals, weddings, and funerals. Not as many weddings, I guess, happening in a church. Maybe not as many funerals. But so that's a little bit off. Bequests and grants. When we budget, we typically don't budget for bequests and grants unless we know it's coming. So we budget just a little bit in 2023, and we got more than what we budgeted. So that was pretty good. And then other is just fundraising that we do, dinners and those type of things. So through the machinations of the ins and outs, we're off by about $15,000 on our revenues. So what's going on with expenses? So expenses, there you can see it, the big ticket item, $500,000 is for people. The property maintenance and utilities, we don't pay rent here. That's just to maintain this facility. And it comes down to have a shortfall of $112,000. What did we say it was going to be? We thought it was going to be short by about 105. So a little bit off. Always difficult to budget these things. Going back up to revenues, you see in the little purple, we have congregants. So, who's the core? What's the core that's going on here that's funding this place? Generally coming, obviously, from the donations, and we're saying that we got about 290 people actively donating. You'll see that in the annual report. There's some really good stats there. This is more of an average number. It breaks it down by month, I think. Then we have people that are online, 25 online every Sunday. They don't necessarily are watching immediately. They might pick it up later on during the week. And then we've got some people that are showing up on a regular basis here, choir and staff. So the 290, we're going to come back to the 290 a little later on. Just keep that number in mind. So that's the actuals. So in the history of operating results, what have we done over the last 10 years? So the red stuff is a loss. The black one is profit. So Pat, the sage of the finance committee, what happened in 2016? We made all that money. Donated a bunch of money?
We had a vacancy, yes. In 2016, we had a vacancy, and that's, you'd have to go back and look at all the figures, but I think that's mainly why we had a surplus in 2016.
Right. So the budget, our ops probably would have been break even, but we only ended up with one minister, and so it helped save some money. But over the last 10 years, you can see we have some red going on. So you might be going, well, wow, that's a lot of red. How come we're not bankrupt? What's going on? Well, we have these.
Just so people know, in 2020, I think, in 2020 and 21, we were fortunate during COVID that people continued to give, but we also got substantially from one of the federal programs that was helping companies and nonprofits to weather it through the pandemic. And in both those years, I think we got about $70,000 in each of those years as supplemental funding from the federal government, which we didn't get after that.
So I think what Pat's saying is if those programs weren't around these years, it would have been down here. Yeah. All right. So when you look at that, you go, wow, that's a lot of red. We got a lot of red. A lot of red.
How red are we right now? Like, how much deficit are we in right now?
Well, we'll look at it right now. Good question. Well, you're savvy to the scene. You're listening. That's great. Okay, so why haven't we gone bankrupt? Well, we have these reserve funds. So we got about $1 million in various funds that can be tapped into for operations. And you see that over the last 10 years, kind of gone up and down. Kind of looks dramatic, but that's only because the scale upon which I put it on was pretty narrow. If I would have had, that axis as 0 and then the top one at 3 million, that line would probably look a little bit more flat. It's kind of bouncing around $1 million. So we might ask ourselves, well, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. You just showed me a graph where we're losing money every year, and this thing is kind of bouncing around $1 million. Why? What's going on there? Any guesses? Oh, by the way, these funds are managed by Royal Bank of Canada and Investors Group. Yeah, very good. Stock markets. So on average, the TSX And the S&P 500, that's the American one, have returned over that 10-year period, on average, 10%. So our funds are making all this money, which we then, for all intents and purposes, pull out and use it to help with the operations. So that's one set of funds, reserve funds, $1 million. Then we have these other funds, designated funds. These ones are a little bit more restricted. Pat, I'm going to call on you again. The restrictions on the use of these funds is, what, in general, how would you categorize them without getting into too much detail?
I just guessing, I think that what makes up those funds are the Kowaliok Fund, which was left before I joined the church in '84 by a lady for seniors outreach. It's made up of two other funds. Did you have the funds there? And there's two other funds in there. There's a Falkenberg Fund, which is a small amount for the choir director to use to hire an assistant or a student to train. And there are two other funds that are related to the facility, I think, which are small amounts.
Yeah, so they are a little bit more restrictive. Can't just dip your hand into it, call up IG and RBC and say, hey, can you send us the money? There's a little few more gymnastics you have to go through to pull the funds. It has to be for more of a specific purpose. So this one, again, bouncing around that $500,000. And again, it looks a little bit dramatic going up and down, but that's because if I put it on a wider scale, if I use 0 at the bottom and put 1.5 million up at the top, this thing would look pretty flat. And the reason it's flat is because it's making, on average, 10%, but we're pulling money out to operate the church. So in total, there's about 1.5 million in funds out there that this church has to help subsidize those losses that we've seen. So that's 2023. Before I move on to 2024 budget, any questions out there, concerns, thoughts, feelings?
Ideas for money?
Yes, we have. Wow, you're right on top of it. You're like several slides ahead of me each time. Did I answer your other question, though? Your question about the accumulated...
What's the accumulated debt as of now?
there is no debt. I mean, there's little loans that we got from...
Now you got the $60,000
Yeah.
one, yeah.
But in the
But it
grand
paid it
scheme of
back.
things, it's not a major item.
So the church isn't running at a deficit then? I thought it
It
was.
is running at a deficit from an operating perspective.
So what is that amount?
So as we saw, it was about a $113,000 loss in
Okay.
2023. Yep. Okay, so 1.5 million available in funds, of which 500,000 is a little bit more difficult to access. Yes? Okay. No other questions on 2023? Everybody wants to hear about 2024? Okay, what do we do? What are we talking about for 2024? Let's start off. We'll put in as our placeholder our 2023 budget. And so the Finance Committee, we work with certain parameters, we use certain context. Part of the context we like is, what did we do last year? That's always a good place to start. And then from there, we're looking for knowns. What do we know? Well, we know generally the history of our donations. So, in the grand scheme of things, our 2024 budget, we would say, is conservative. Better to under-promise and over-deliver. That is the mantra of any good accountant. So, for donations, we know we've lost some key donors. The trend is your friend. So we're thinking about $380,000. Then on rentals, we gave everybody a bit of an increase because there's inflation. So based on our renters and how much we're going to get, we increased that. On the bequests and grants, we only budget what we know that we're going to get, not something that we get during the year that we hadn't anticipated. So we know there's some bequests of coming in for this year, and then our fundraising is, it's the activity that we're doing on a regular basis on smaller projects. So we're looking at revenues going down by $47,000. So then on the expenses side, we're going up on M&P. We're keeping the same head count. The United Church of Canada tells us how much we have to raise salary and wages for our ministers, and then we pass that on to everybody else here. So this year is probably the biggest one for 2024, 6.3% inflationary increase, which, kind of tracks inflation. Although I can't think of one thing that hasn't gone up 6.3%. So it's a pretty reasonable amount, I think. Our M&P is, it's not going up by 6.3% because, I don't know how many of you know Garth. Is Garth here? He's hiding? There he is, over there. Garth is going to be moving on March 15th. And he's going to be trying some different things, and he's done a tremendous job for us, and we'll have a more formal goodbye for him. But it fits into the narrative we're talking about here because we're converting his position from a finance manager to a bookkeeper. The difference between a finance manager and a bookkeeper is more of your, you're more of a workhorse type of accountant. Finance manager is the workhorse accountant. Plus, they bring a little bit of extra flavor, a little bit extra knowledge. They know about funds, managing funds. They know about dealing a little bit more with auditors, whereas the bookkeeper is you show up, with these smaller businesses with your shoebox. Here, put this in a number or a set of financial statements that looks good. The bookkeeper we have she's pretty experienced. She's signed up on a contract basis, not an employee. She lives right over there, very close, and her hours are going to be less than Garth. So we got somebody in place. The other part of Garth's role may evolve into somebody who has that position that can take that on, but we thought, hey, let's just see how things play out here, because we feel the people on the finance committee, Pat, myself, and Tori, can handle some of these other parts of Garth's role until such time as we figure out how we're going to handle that position. You have to remember that position was a volunteer position for, I don't know, Pat, how many years? 50 years? It was always a volunteer position. And one day Robert Moss said, I'm done. I can't keep coming in here at lunch and doing everybody's paychecks. Not fair. So I said, all right, that makes sense. So going to a bookkeeper isn't necessarily historically going down to how we maintain that role. In fact, it's still keeping it up from where historically it has been. And Pat probably came in here on weekends and lunch hours from his job and doing all that stuff. So, yeah, that's the finance manager role, and that's why it's not going up by 6.3. Yep.
How many people are looking at our numbers all the time? You said RBC was controlling stuff, but how many people would be looking at our books? And we have a bookkeeper. What else do we have?
Yeah, so the bookkeeper creates the numbers. Then the bookkeeper slash finance manager typically reports to the treasurer, who is part of the finance committee. We don't have a treasurer right now, but we have a pretty robust finance committee, I would argue. So the bookkeeper reports to the finance committee. The finance committee meets every month. We go over the numbers, we look at actual budget, variance, why is there a variance, what happened, what's going on. And then with the fund managers, RBC and IG, typically the finance committee will meet once or twice a year to see what's going on with those funds. We get the reports. I mean, they're not all that exciting, those reports. I mean, it's all blue chip stuff with dividends, and if anybody here looked at their RRS, well, I'm sure you look at your RSP. All that blue chip stuff is the blue chip stuff we have, so not a lot of NVIDIA stocks in there. Sorry? And then what happens is, yeah, the question is
Is there any way to consolidate them?
The funds? No, there is current.
People, the amount of people. Couldn't RBC do our bookkeeping for us?
No. RBC are more finance managers. They manage funds. So it's a separate discipline in the accounting finance world. But to answer your question with the numbers, people overseeing the numbers, so we talked about the bookkeeper creates the numbers, finance committee treasurer looks at the numbers, and then you need a third party to come in and tell you whether the numbers are accurate or not, and that's where the auditor comes in. Third party looks at the numbers and says, yeah, everything's great, or no, you got a problem, and typically you don't really find a lot of problems. So that's the structure for the integrity of the numbers. So yeah, so same head count. Property, maintenance, and utilities, we don't pay rent, but that thing's probably going to stay relatively the same. Admin and finance there's a little bit more there, probably due to the fire that we had downstairs, and we have to invest some money that is not being covered by the deductible on our insurance. And then the rest is staying pretty steady. So about $187,000 loss for 2024 versus 113 last year. Yes, Richard.
It was a flood, not a fire.
Sorry, a flood. Flood and fire. It's a different place. Thank you, Richard. I was wondering why there was no smell in this place. Okay, any questions on the budget?
Hi, Jeff Anderson. So when Garth was hired, the church decided we needed a business manager, being that the church had so much office stuff to deal with and IT and website stuff. But now that we aren't going with a business manager anymore, how is that stuff being taken care of?
Yeah, the original vision for the finance manager / business manager role was to come in and take away the duties of the volunteer who's running in at lunchtime doing checks and doing deposits and paying vendors, but then also look at ways for raising money, going out, getting grants, sourcing ways to actually pay for their position. The issue we found was that Garth found was there was a whole lot of work to be done on the plumbing, the accounting plumbing to be done here. So a lot of what Garth did, a lot of good work that Garth did was cleaning up a lot of those processes and systems and made them quite efficient, such that now we can hand it over to a bookkeeper, and we anticipate the training part's going to be not all that long because of the systems in place. And Garth did do some of the IT and the communication part of it for a bit as well. The final piece, the one is on the grants. That would have been great, but you know, there was other fires burning. Use that analogy again. Any other questions on 2024?
I guess my question is fairly basic. Those red numbers at the bottom, what is the strategy going forward to try to reach? Because obviously you can't run indefinitely on a deficit.
So the next 4 slides talks about potential strategies. That's a good question. I'm not avoiding it right now, but just any more questions on the 2024 budget other than how do we avoid that?
Since there's been an increase in everything, have you increased the cost of having weddings and the like at the church as well?
Well,
Have you
so
inflated?
the question is, have we increased any of the costs for, I guess, our renters? Yes, we have. We went through that exercise, and there's quite a debate that happens at the Finance Committee. I mean, you're balancing outreach stuff to people just using our facility. And you also want to make sure you're charging market rent because you don't want to chase them away. So to answer your question, yes, that's been factored in.
If you look at the budget here, the issues that we have are not necessarily expenditures, but eventually you have to reduce expenditures if you have deficits. But our issue here is donations that are decreasing, and we're not. The philosophy, to me, should be that the people who are presently in the seats and are supporters of RW should provide the operating monies that are required to operate the church on an annual basis. And if you look at that, that's not happening. And as Eric referred to earlier, we've had a number of people who were generous givers who have left, so that accounts for the drop from 421 to 379. So it's a challenge for us to see how we're going to get that number up if we're going to operate on the same platform as we're operating now. What Eric is going to talk about, a possible different platform that we might be able to operate on that may benefit us. But as you can see, it's the donations that are an issue for us.
Any other questions?
Myself personally, I'm on AISH and CPP disability, so, and sorry, I'm not used to having a microphone. You know, I give all I can, you know. I can't afford more than $20 a month, that's all I can give. But I got a pretty good brain, I got some pretty interesting ideas on how to raise money, but I don't have anywhere to speak to that, you know. Like, I don't know what committee I would go on, or if there even is is there a brainstorming committee to how to make money, or like, could we do something like that?
Yeah, well, there's a number of different committees for what's the formal name of it? The fundraising one? Fundraising gathering meeting, that gets right to the point. So there's a number of different meetings, committees. We'd be more than happy to tap into your brain and your ideas and hear about them. Finance is always looking for people, all sorts of committees. So yeah, there's a lot of different avenues here for that. And you can choose to, on these committees, I'm not going to speak on behalf of all the committees, but the ones I'm on are virtual. So you don't necessarily physically need to be here for them, and that's really helped out with people's schedules, personal schedules.
For the people who have left, who were generous donators, is there a process for following up with them to invite them back or ask them why they left?
We definitely have followed up with people if they've made it known to us that they have left, and there's a variety of different reasons for it. So it's not necessarily that they were unhappy with something at the church, but things in their lives may have changed. So there's a lot of different reasons why people may pull their money out and go elsewhere, and there's also a lot of new people that are coming to the church too. So there's kind of that continual ebb and flow, I would say.
Yeah, I should mention that. So finance doesn't, we budget for what we know. And Karen's right. I mean, people come and go on a regular basis. And if you look at the demographics of this area and what's happening in this area, it's growing. A lot of people don't go to church, but there's probably going to, even if you get, 2, 3, 4, 5% of the people coming in around this area to start showing up here, you're going to get more donations. So it's an ebb and flow. So people leave, other people come. We are getting more people here. Once they get, they've sat here for a while, for a few months, year or whatever, oh yeah, this seems like a pretty good place. Is there a committee I can join? Well, I got a little bit of money. I think I'll give a little bit of money. So it's a process. So this is a conservative budget from the revenues perspective. The expenses are what they are. It's a head count thing. That's what it is. This is not a complicated business. You have people paying for a service, which is the ministers talking to us every week, plus a bunch of other great activities going on. And that's it. So it goes back to Pat's point, how much are those people willing to pay for that?
I think not asking for donations in church. I know, but I don't know, it just seems like, doesn't seem like proper church. Give the money.
Yeah, but the plate doesn't go around as much.
I said it doesn't feel like proper church if they're not putting money in the basket, if the basket's not going around. I'm just old-fashioned that way, sorry.
Would it help if we went back to collection plates? We had a mob of people here this morning for the children, and how many of those people actually put anything in at the door? I mean, at least the collection plate, you felt a little bit guilty. You might stick a $10 or a $20 in. Without the collection plates, we're not going to get up any higher.
Once COVID started, of course, people didn't come. So Brenda and I basically did the ushering for that period, for those 2 years. And we only needed a couple of people. It takes about 8 people every Sunday if you're going to take up collection. And it's difficult to organize that. At this point in time, there are 2 ushers here on Sunday. There's 1 usher at the Memorial Hall door, which I organize, and there's 1 usher at the main door, which Brenda organizes. So that it would mean each Sunday as people come in, we would say, would you take up collection today? And it does take some time to organize it, and we don't have the volunteers to do that. If we had a number of people who said, well, I'll come each Sunday and I'll take up offering, then I think we could organize that. But it takes 6 to 8 people, 1 in the balcony and then each side down here. So that's why we're not doing it. We did it at Christmas, and we're going to do it at Easter when we get more people here.
You made money at Christmas, right? You made lots of money at Christmas, right? You got better than normal?
It's hard to tell, Lisa, because Christmas is always a good time for us from the point of open offering, we call it, as opposed to like you who has a number and me who has a number and Ann who has a number, who donate then the one time at Christmas. We call them C&E people, Christmas and Easter people who come to the church on those days. And so we're going to hopefully organize to take up offering on Easter Sunday.
I think Tom had a question.
With the way the deficit is arranged, I think PAR is about the only thing that'll get us out of this. Passing a collection plate just on the off chance that somebody has money, which many people don't carry anymore. It's debit, credit, or whatever. I would put that in the same basket with some of our fundraising. It's great, gives us $1.50, but it's not going to deal with this. We need people who on a monthly basis, reliably, whether they're in church or out of church, the money comes in.
The problem with that, as you see on page 14 of the annual report, is that the PAR people have gone down by 10 from last year. We're not heading in the right direction. Collection plate might be the only way to get a little more money.
Allison's got a question like that.
I think something that we need to consider as a congregation is, like Karen said, we have a lot of new people coming in every week, but I don't know that those people know how we pay our bills. And so I think some other denominations in the Christian world have different ways that they pay people, but I don't know that we're doing a great job of educating our new people on how we pay our staff. And so they might not know that the donations go to that. And so they might think, oh, like, I don't need to today or whatever. But if they knew that all the programming that we did came from donations, they might feel more obligated to or more called to do that. And so I think something that our congregation needs to do on a whole is educate newcomers, and even actually people who have been here a long time, on how we pay our people and how we keep this church running.
Yep, I think there's a healthy discussion there, Pat. Maybe on with the plates and the gratitude and all that. There's always a healthy discussion. But yeah, COVID did slew foot, the gratitude team and the way we collect monies. So now we're trying to make our way back. So. Some good ideas, great ideas. Any other questions, comments on the budget before we talk a little bit about some alternative strategy? No? Okay. So, if let's say we kept on going at 187 loss, eventually one day you drain the funds, and somebody will probably say, well, what's the building worth? Let's get a loan for that. I don't know. I think it's worth $5 million. Put that into a few funds. And then you got another 10, 15 years. But that's not how you want to run an operation where you're slowly digging yourself in. My point is, we still have time. You don't want to be doing this when you only have 12 months left. We got lots of time. And this church has survived, what? 2 world wars, 1 Great Depression, 2 pandemics. So it'll probably survive what we're going through now. My guess. That's just my opinion. All right, so what are some possibilities here? Let's take a look at a model called the Sunday-only model. So this is the narrative, the thinking here is that, whether it's true or not, the majority of the congregants in this church show up on Sunday, listen to some great inspirational stuff up there, then we go for coffee, and then everybody goes home. And some people partake in some stuff during the week, and that's great too. But let's say, no, we're not doing that. We're just doing the Sunday thing. That's it. We're shutting the place down during the week. There's no rentals, all your renters out. And so we don't have any of the infrastructure for that. And under that model, these are just guesses. I mean, the rental one's pretty easy. If you don't have any renters, it's going to go to zero. So, you know, some people might go, I don't really like that model. I'm going to go next door where they do a little bit more stuff. And they're not shut down, so I'm going to go over there. So we lose 30% there, a little less on the fundraising. Still can tap into some grants under that model. And then we reduce the biggest cost, the head count. We just go down to one full-time minister. Facilities manager is part-time, still need to maintain the place. Still need a music director, part-time, just like he is right now, because a lot of activity going on Sunday, you need the music. And you have a part-time finance manager, you'd be more of a bookkeeper, obviously. And so now, under that scenario, we're roughly break-even. You know, you can quibble with the numbers, you can quibble with the percentages. Mostly it would be on the revenues. But you would definitely stem the bleeding to a Sunday-only model. And even if, you know, let's say that was a $10,000 loss, and you got 1.5 million, $10,000 loss, you'd be here for a long time. So that's one possibility, just showing up on Sunday, we're doing our thing, having a good time, everything's good. But some people don't want that. So let's take a look at another model. So one of the things we did was, you know, what actually happens in this church? What's going on? So we decided, let's just start listing what we're doing in this church as far as activities. We took a look at it on a monthly basis, and we got a big list. And if something happened during the month, we would give it a 1. So religious activities like Sunday service, choir practice, that's religious. Outreach is what's listed there. Karen, Dirk, what are your thoughts on what's your definition in your mind of outreach versus religious?
Obviously, all of it is part of our faith, but if we were to separate it, the religious or the ministry pieces would be those things that we do to nourish our souls and to form our faith, those types of programs, whereas outreach is how we're living out our faith through activities serving the world in a wider way.
So there's some activities that are clearly religious, some are clearly more outreach, but there's overlap. Like you would say wild church would be an overlap between outreach and religious. So they don't necessarily have to be not black and white where one's or blue and purple, where it's either this or this. There could be overlap, and we took that into consideration when we took a look at all the units. So turns out that over half of what we do here is outreach. It's not religious, not that more Sunday-only activity. So then you might go, well, that's very nice, Eric. I like your activities slide, but maybe some of these things you're not spending a lot of time in the facility doing them, therefore they shouldn't have as big of a weighting towards religious and outreach. We said, okay, that's fair enough. Let's take a look at how many minutes each one of these are used each month for the activity. Does that change our percentages? So number of minutes in this facility or online, basically using our infrastructure here, between religious and outreach, and now we're going a little bit more heavy on the outreach side. So the takeaway on the whole from this slide is we're really quite a bit of an outreach organization. And if you think about the number of how many congregants we said we're actively donating, got to think back to the first slide, 290. Well, you shouldn't be able to answer that because you'd be disqualified. 290. So when I look at this, it's just my opinion, when I look at this, in my other life, I'm a CPA, I'm a chief financial officer for a company that makes valves. So if somebody brought this to me, I'd go, well, you got these 290 people that are basically showing up for the blue stuff, and they're financing all this outreach stuff. You know, that's why you got 2 ministers. That's why you got a bookkeeper / finance manager. That's why you got these event coordinators and all these other people that are here during the week. A lot of it is for this outreach. So what are you doing about the outreach? And then, you know, when you talk to the board, they go, well, we're not doing a whole lot on the fundraising on the outreach. We're just relying on the congregants. Yeah, but the congregants are mostly coming in for an hour and a half a week. Meanwhile, you've got all this other activity going on. So another potential we looked at is, so we have this not-for-profit organization which has been created under the Societies Act of Alberta, and it's called Robertson Wesley United Church, that the financial statements are part of a legal entity called Robertson Wesley United Church, and that's where all the religious activities are parked under this outreach model idea we're thinking of. Then we would create another organization, also a not-for-profit, called whatever you want to call it, Westmount Outreach Society. What's our new name in Oliver now? I don't know. Yeah, that Outreach Foundation. Aren't we in Oliver? Is this not Oliver? 123rd, whatever you want to call it. So it's a separate organization, and you park the outreach activities in there. So part of the problem, Pat can attest to this, I can attest to this, when you go to apply for grants, any of that stuff, you look at the requirements, and you know, okay, yeah, no, so yeah, we're feeding the homeless, underserved people, hit the checklist, everything's great. No religious organizations. So, that's not really good. Well, we're not really doing, we're not asking for the money to do religious stuff. We want to do outreach stuff. And they go, yeah, sorry, you're a religious organization. Same with, if you go to a private donor, an individual or a corporation, like if you go to a corporation and say, hey, I got this outreach thing going on, I'd like to raise some money. Oh, that sounds great. What's the name of your group? Oh, Robertson Wesley United Church. Ooh, you're a church, right? Yeah, but we do outreach. Yeah, but you're in a church. Yeah, I know, but so the ministers administer outreach to people, and we got people coming in, Magic Pantry on Wednesday, we're feeding the homeless. We don't care if you're Jewish, Muslim, Catholic, we don't care, we'll just feed you. Yeah, it sounds really good, but you're a church, right? So you spend half the meeting talking about your church. So just get rid of that. Now you show up and you say, we're an outreach organization. Oh, 123rd Street Outreach. Well, that's great. Sounds good to me. Where do I sign up? Like, I always wonder about that. You know, they do great work with the refugees. Is it the Mennonite Society? I wonder how difficult, if we talk to that individual, raises money, how many times people go like, what's a Mennonite? I giving money to the Mennonites? No, you're giving money to help with the refugees. Yeah, but it's the Mennonites, isn't it? Must be confusing for them. So in my experience in raising money as a CFO, when I used to go up and down the towers of some of the financial capitals around, people are giving money. They'll take the meeting because they're ready to give money, but they're looking for a reason not to. It sounds kind of offsetting, but they took the meeting because they're interested. Now they're looking for reasons not. So you want to take away as many of the reasons not to give. And sadly, a lot of people look at churches and go, not for me. No, I don't know what you guys are doing behind your closed doors. I'm not interested. So if you create a separate outreach organization, now you can go out and start to fundraise and get a lot of these grants. So the board of directors, we have a board of directors here at Robertson Wesley. You could create it where it's the same board or same group of people that it's overseeing, that outreach organization. And you've just split it off from one to the other. So what would that look like if we started to raise monies that way? So the black numbers are the 2024 budget for Robertson Wesley United Church. You remember those numbers? And then the pink numbers are what we think we could get as an outreach. So private donations are corporate donors, they're individuals, and we can say what we want about the oil and gas industry in Alberta, but a lot of the wealth we see here is from that industry, and there are tons of examples of the oil and gas industry, individuals who are willing to give. The Robbins Health Center over at McEwen is from Bill Robbins, just passed away last year, oil and gas guy. American oil and gas guy who had a subsidiary up here and gave $5 million to the community. There's the Wayward Steel Technical School at Nate, Donald Obrowski, oil and gas guy. Lots of oil and gas guys out there. More than happy to give money back. They're making lots of money. You show up as a church. Now I was talking to, there's a guy, so I play Friday men's league soccer. Dirk plays. He's in my league. Dirtiest guy in the league, gets a red card every game. No, he's great. He's terrific. Nice guy. Everybody loves him. Anyhow, so the on my team is the guy from the Edmonton Scottish Society, and they get money all over the place for soccer. Not knocking soccer. Soccer's great. I play soccer. But on the hierarchy of needs of a community, I would say that feeding the homeless is maybe slightly ahead of soccer. But they're able to do it. They're not religious. And so he used to work for a pipeline company. He was on their donations team. And he said, yeah. So I explained the situation with the church. And I said, our church. And he said, yeah, no, we would get churches coming in, and they'd make it pretty close to the final round because they're talking about their outreach stuff, and then, no, it's a church. Let's give it to these other guys. They're not a church. We don't know what these church guys are doing. So, we got 25 grand in our annual donations coming from the private people or corps. Then we think, we could get a little creative with a social worker. Karen, you want to explain how does that work? Where are we getting this social worker donating it to us?
One of the ideas we've had as staff is we've noticed that there's been a greater need in our area for people that do social work or asking for those kinds of resources. And so in talking with the Bissell Center, we're exploring the idea of could we house one of their employees here to provide that service. And so whether we give them free rent and they cover the cost of the wage of their social worker or something like that. So it's just a preliminary discussion, but it is a potential possibility that I think would benefit this area and benefit the church quite widely.
So there's that possibility. Grants, outreach, 50 grand. I mean, Brad and I are going back and forth. There's one right now we got targeted. This is what, 75,000. We haven't gotten it. We haven't applied for it, but we fit all the parameters. The Scottish soccer guy gets it. The Scottish soccer guy gets it. It's great. Good for him. But we want it too. You could do a casino. I mean, casinos are a little spicy. Some people don't necessarily like casinos, but some of the funding we get comes from casinos. It's just laundered through some other grant. So we get monies from gambling, but you could go for an outright casino. It's actually pretty fun. Anybody done a casino? Anybody with kids? Yeah, they're great.
I've done lots of casinos. I'm a casino angel.
Yeah, there you go. There's good food in casinos. So all of a sudden, you know, that's an opportunity where you increase the revenues. Then our expenses look like that. And our head count remains the same, except this is just a suggestion model. The second minister is not a minister, but a full-time social worker. This is a concept. It's a model. It's not set in stone. You know, the idea was, or the question was, you guys got any ideas? This would be an idea. So now you're at, you know, $17,000 where of a surplus. So under this model, I mean, if in theory the peach stuff you could go and raise a ton of money, then you know what happens with the religious is a little less critical. And a lot of people come into this church and look at the church and go, look at all the pews. There's so many pews, not a lot of people. Man, you guys, looks like you guys are dying. When I look at it, it's the opposite. Our problem is we're growing. Only problem is we're not raising the money from the growth part. We're not leveraging all of the great outreach work we're doing to go get money for it. So we're not dying. We're growing, but we need to go out and get active and start raising the money based on the peach side of things. I mean, you could have it where, what do you say, 290 congregants? You can go down to 150. Might still be fine as long as you're raising on the outreach part. You know, history tells us that, you know, over 80 to 100 years, there's always swings in any society where, you know, there's usually a great calamity, a war, and everybody goes to church after that. The institution's super strong. And then as people who went through the war start to fade away, the society continues or starts to do dumb things. Institutions break down. You have a great calamity, usually war. And then everybody comes back to church. So, you know, what we're experiencing, like all the other churches, is not unusual in history. It's just how do you bridge yourself to the next time where this place will be full. And for us, we got a fantastic opportunity with outreach. We're in a growing neighborhood, and there's lots of people around that I'm sure would be more than happy to help donate towards that. What was you talked about Randy Boissonneau, our MP, what was his, he approached us for?
Yeah, Randy at one point said to Angela and I when we were working on the conference, the LGBTQ conference, he said, you know, I've got money that I want to give to an organization like yours, but you need a separate society in order for us to give you that money to do the work. So we have politicians, we have people in this neighborhood that really appreciate what Robertson Wesley offers, but again, they're tied in the same way we are when applying for government grants that we're often kept out of those because of the religious piece.
Yeah, so the optics when we come here on Sunday is you look at it and you go, well, the pews seem relatively empty. If you come during the week, this place it's hopping, it's bumping. So you just got to tap into that. And this is not a cure-all. I'm not saying this is going to fix everything. It's just one idea. There was the other one. There was a Sunday-only idea. We could do that one as well. Or we just keep doing what we're doing right now and maybe just get a loan against the building and you're good for another 10, 15 years. So there's options at the end of the day. Yes, Allison?
I'm just wondering, are there other churches that do this model? Like, is this a new thing, or is this something that happens pretty regularly?
Yes, there are other churches that do this model in a lot of different ways. There's in Vancouver where they took this and they said, well, there's only 290 of us getting together. We're going to sell this, create condos, and we're going to take the money and we're going to park it, and we got millions, and now they can get together for as long as they want. There's other ones that have redeveloped their properties into income-producing properties. So there's all sorts of different things that folks are doing. This type of model, yes, there is.
In fact, Robertson, who asked that question? Robertson Wesley has this model now. We have what's called the Robertson Wesley Music Society. It was specifically set up so that we could get grants outside of Robertson Wesley as a church. And I've been involved in getting grants like for the kitchen and the elevator, and they give us grants because we were getting, they overlooked us as a religious organization because we were making it available for disabled people, and that's how we got our grants, both for the kitchen and for downstairs. But if you go on to the Edmonton Community Foundation, which has a lot of money and gives a lot of grants, when you start going down there, it's pretty close to the top of the list. We do not give to religious organizations. But we do have this model, Allison, right here ourselves. And they've gotten money for koinonia and for going on trips with the bell choir and things like that.
Yeah, that 50-50, Edmonton Oilers 50-50, that foundation, they don't give to religious organizations. And then there's probably a reason for that, and that's fine. There's other places to look to go get funding. So that's all I got. That's the actuals, that's the budget, this is what we're playing with. We've talked to the board about this. We did a financial strategy session in early February where we talked about this and some other ideas. So there's a lot of activity going on in the background looking at different solutions. So, any questions? Other questions? Feedback?
Hi, excuse me. I noticed, like you said, there's room on there for one full-time minister, and there's only 168 hours in a week. How does all the programming and all the spiritual things happen with just one full-time minister?
In that case, with the social worker would take on a bunch of the roles that the ministers are doing, for one thing. I think the other thing, though, is that it also relies more on the model of lay people in our congregation offering leadership in more ways. So we go back to the traditional model of the United Church, where, again, more volunteers are a part of that work. It's not solely reliant on your ministers to do all of that work.
And again, this is a theoretical concept. It wouldn't necessarily fall down to exactly how we have it there. It would evolve. Even if it got implemented like this, it would probably get evolved over time. Any other questions, comments, feedback? It's always good to get feedback, test thoughts, test ideas. Anything on the chat? Yep. Wants to get his steps in.
I just wanted to say thank you so much, Eric, for explaining this to us, and for everyone on the committee who helped come up with these potential solutions and ideas. And it makes it look really possible that we can make a change in some area and get through this.
Thanks for that, appreciate it. And so for me, when I see that loss, and I'm more of a glass full person, like to me, I see that that's an opportunity. Because, you know, when you break even and you really need to change, no, people don't like change. So, you know, nothing really happens. There's no big deal. But when you get that type of loss, that's great. That motivates people, and ideas and juices start flowing, and let's think about things. And that's why this church has survived all these calamities over the years, because people get motivated, and we'll figure this one out. Might not necessarily be this might not be the solution, it might not be as successful as we have it, but it might be something that might look like that. So, thanks for the feedback, it's good. All right. Oh.
Those of you who have the financial statements, if you can give them back because they're not finalized, we would appreciate that, please.